Okay, so here's something that kept me up at night for years. That toxic person who eventually destroyed your peace, who drained your energy, who made you question everything about yourself. They didn't just randomly pick you, they studied you first. Like, actually studied you. Watched how you talk to people, watched how you react under pressure, watched what makes you feel guilty. And while you were just being yourself, just trying to be a good person, they were taking notes, mental notes, building a psychological profile of exactly how to get under your skin. And the creepiest part, you had no idea it was even happening. But if you're watching this right now, I'm guessing you're not that person anymore. You're what psychologists call hypervigilant. Not in a paranoid way, in a self protective way. You're someone who's been burned enough times that your brain finally learned to spot predators before they get close. You're in that phase where you're learning to trust your gut over people's words. And that's not a flaw. That's pattern recognition. That's emotional intelligence. That's you finally choosing yourself. So let me show you the 5 signs that toxic people are actively studying you so you can spot them before they sink their hooks in. Because once you see these patterns, you'll look back at every toxic relationship and think, oh my God, they were doing this the whole time, and I just didn't see it. Sign number 1. They give you an unusual level of attention. And I don't mean they compliment you a lot or they seem interested in you. I mean, they observe you. Like, really observe you. The way a predator watches prey. They notice things normal people don't notice. How you react when someone interrupts you. How you handle conflict. How long it takes you to get angry. What makes you uncomfortable. And here's the thing that makes this so hard to spot. It doesn't feel romantic or friendly. It feels invasive. Like they're studying you for a test you didn't know you were taking. I had someone do this to me once, and I didn't recognize it until way too late. They would remember the smallest details about conversations we had, things I barely remembered saying. And at first, I thought, wow, this person really listens. They really care about me. But then I started noticing they weren't just listening, they were cataloging. Every time I mentioned something that stressed me out, they'd bring it up later. Every time I showed vulnerability, they'd file it away. And eventually, I realized they weren't building connection. They were building leverage. They were figuring out exactly which emotional buttons to push to get what they wanted from me. And that realization made my stomach drop. Here's what I didn't understand back then that I understand now. This isn't admiration. Psychologists call this predatory attention, and it's completely different from genuine interest. When someone genuinely likes you, they ask about your life because they want to know you. When someone is targeting you, they ask about your life because they want to control you. There's a massive difference. And your gut knows it, even when your brain doesn't want to believe it. So here's the test. Pay attention to how someone's attention feels. Does it feel warm and reciprocal? Or does it feel like you're being interrogated by someone pretending to be friendly? Do they remember things about you in a way that feels caring, or in a way that feels like they're building a file on you? If their attention makes you feel seen, that's beautiful. If their attention makes you feel studied, that's a red flag the size of Texas. But here's what nobody tells you about recognizing this. You're not being paranoid for noticing it. You're being awake. There's this lie we've all been sold that good people assume the best about everyone. But research on manipulation shows that people who ignore their gut instincts end up in the most toxic situations. You're not mean for being cautious. You're smart. You're protecting yourself based on pattern recognition. And that's not cold. That's conscious. You're not paranoid. You're perceptive. And there's a huge difference. Sign number 2. They test your boundaries constantly. Small tests at first. So small, you barely notice. They interrupt you more than they interrupt other people. They make jokes at your expense and watch how you react. They ask personal questions way too early in the relationship. They show up late and see if you complain. They borrow something and return it damaged and watch if you say anything. Every single time you let something slide, they make a mental note. This person doesn't protect their boundaries. I can push further, and they will. They absolutely will. I let someone do this to me for months without realizing what was happening. It started so small. They'd make a slightly mean joke and I'd laugh it off because I didn't want to seem sensitive. They'd cancel plans last minute and I'd say, no problem. because I wanted to be understanding. They'd tell my secrets to other people, and I'd convince myself it wasn't a big deal. Each time, I thought I was being a good friend. But what I was actually doing was teaching them that they could disrespect me without consequences. And the boundary violations just kept getting bigger, because that's how it works. Here's what therapists understand about this that most people don't. Boundary testing is not random, it's a psychological pressure test. Toxic people push boundaries the way scientists test materials to see where they break. They're not doing it by accident. They're doing it on purpose to figure out how much you'll tolerate. And every time you don't push back, you're essentially telling them, keep going, I can take more. This is what researchers call incremental boundary erosion, and it's one of the most common tactics manipulators use. So here's what you do. The very first time someone crosses a boundary, even a tiny one, you say something. Not aggressively, just calmly. Hey, I don't appreciate that, or please don't do that again. And then watch what happens. Normal people will apologize and stop. They'll respect your boundary without making it a big deal. Toxic people will do one of two things. They'll either get defensive and try to make you feel bad for having boundaries, or they'll pretend to respect your boundary but then test a different one to see if you are consistent. That reaction tells you everything you need to know about them. Sign number 3, and this one makes my skin crawl when I think about how long I didn't see it. They rush emotional intimacy. They ask about your stress, your problems, your insecurities, all disguised as concern. They want to know your weak spots, not so they can help you, so they can use them later. If you open up easily, they know you are emotionally accessible. If you are guarded, they push harder because mystery threatens their control. What you need to understand is this: toxic people don't want connection. They want access. Access to your thoughts, your feelings, your fears, your triggers. And the faster you let them in, the faster they can start manipulating you. What? Yeah, it sounds paranoid, but it's actually just pattern recognition. I had someone do this to me, and I genuinely thought we were becoming close friends. They asked me deep questions about my childhood, my fears, my relationship struggles. And I answered because I thought that's what vulnerability is, that's what building trust looks like. But then I noticed something weird. I knew everything about their struggles, but they never actually did anything to fix them. They just kept using them as hooks to keep me emotionally invested. And every time I tried to create distance, they'd share something even more vulnerable to pull me back in. They weren't building intimacy, they were building dependency. They wanted me to feel responsible for their emotional well-being so I'd never leave. Psychologists have a term for this. It's called trauma bonding acceleration. It's when someone artificially speeds up emotional intimacy by sharing intense personal information way too soon. And it works because most of us think vulnerability equals trust. But your real trust is built slowly. Real intimacy develops over time with consistent behavior. When someone rushes it, that's not connection. That's strategy. They are trying to bypass your natural defenses by making you feel like you are already close before you've had time to see who they really are. Here's the test. Pay attention to the pace of emotional sharing. Do they share things gradually as you get to know each other? Or do they dump their entire life story on you in the first few conversations? Do they respect your pace? Or do they push you to open up faster than feels comfortable? Real connection doesn't feel rushed. It feels natural. When someone's forcing intimacy, they're not building a relationship. They're setting a trap. And here's your permission slip. You don't owe anyone deep emotional access just because they demand it. You don't have to match someone's vulnerability level just because they're sharing heavy things. You're allowed to move at your own pace. You're allowed to keep your guard up until someone proves through consistent action, not just intense conversation, that they're safe. Protecting yourself isn't being closed off, it's being wise. Sign number 4. They subtly challenge your confidence, not with obvious insults. That would be too easy to spot. They do it with small fractures. They question your decisions under the guise of concern. Are you sure that's a good idea? They compare you to other people in ways that make you feel inferior. Well, Sarah would probably handle this differently. They laugh at your opinions just lightly enough that you start second-guessing yourself. These micro-attacks are designed to weaken your self-belief. because once your confidence drops, your resistance drops with it. And that's exactly what they want. I had someone do this so effectively that I started doubting everything about myself. They'd say things like, "I'm just trying to help you, but don't you think you're being a little sensitive about this?" Or, "Wow, I would never let someone talk to me that way. You're so patient." And on the surface, these comments seemed helpful or even complimentary. But underneath, they were telling me I was too sensitive. I was too passive. I wasn't handling things right. And after months of this, I genuinely started believing I was the problem. That's how insidious this tactic is. They make you think they're on your side while they're actively dismantling your confidence. What psychologists know about this is that it's a form of covert emotional abuse called negging. It's when someone gives you a compliment wrapped in criticism or questions your competence while pretending to help. And it works because it flies under the radar. You can't call it out without sounding defensive. You can't prove it was meant to hurt you. So you just internalize it. You start thinking, maybe they're right. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I don't handle things well. But here's the reframe you need. You're not too sensitive for having feelings. You're not weak for having boundaries. You're not wrong for trusting your perception. What's actually happening is someone is trying to make you doubt yourself so they can control you more easily. Sign number 5, and this is the one that confirms everything. They react badly when you try to pull away. If you create distance and they suddenly increase their attention, their flattery, their involvement in your life, that's not affection. That's panic. Toxic people don't like losing control. They sense when their grip loosens and they act fast to tighten it again. They might apologize. They might change their behavior temporarily. They might love bomb you with attention and kindness, but none of it lasts. It's just a temporary adjustment to reestablish dominance. I watched this happen with someone who had been slowly draining me for over a year. The second I started pulling back, responding slower, showing less interest, they flipped a switch. Suddenly, they were checking in on me constantly. Suddenly, they wanted to make plans all the time. Suddenly, they were being the perfect friend. And I almost fell for it. I almost thought, oh, maybe I was wrong about them. Maybe they really do care. But then the moment I was back in their orbit, the old patterns returned. The boundary violations, the subtle put-downs, the emotional manipulation. Because none of that temporary kindness was real. It was just bait to hook me again. Psychologists call this hoovering. It's when someone sucks you back in after you try to leave. And it's one of the clearest signs that someone was never interested in a genuine relationship. They were interested in control. Because people who genuinely care about you will respect your need for space. They'll give you room to breathe. They won't panic and try to force their way back into your life. Only people who see you as something to control react that way. Now here's where the transformation happens. And this is something most people don't talk about. There are 3 stages to becoming untargetable to toxic